Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Cancer, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for Gemini season, all June 2026, whatever your timing paradigm is. I'm here for it. I hope you're well. I'm using the 777 Tarot for you today. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's via the links in the description box below. One link will take you to Selfie if you just want the extended for this video. If you want access to the other extended content that I do, and I do quite a lot actually, you might consider coming over to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix on the Circle platform. There you can get access to all of the extended monthly readings for all of the signs, but you also have access to the weekly energy readings, which run between 45 and 60 minutes long, depending on how intense the energy is. And you could have the opportunity to participate in the Deccan Walk, and I'm not overstating it when I say it's proving to be life-changing. We're 7 decans into 36 decans, and the differences are palpable already. Additionally, in the description box, there is a link to book a reading with me if you would like to do that. And I've also put up some of the classes that I've hosted over on Circle up for there. If you would like to study with me and you don't have time to come participate in the live classes, you might find those interesting. So let me flip the camera around here. Let's get into what we're actually going to be doing here, Cancer, today. We're going to be asking the first and only important question, or the most important question you can ask yourself in 2026, and that is, where are you right now? We're not interested about what's coming down the pike or what you're afraid of or any of those kind of things. It's like, what is right now tangibly your experience? And from there somewhat inspired by the Deccan Walk actually, we're going to be having a look at what part of your worldview or your thinking or your belief structure, your belief systems are actually ripe for a revision right now. So we'll dig into that and see what that looks like for you, Cancer. And then we will close out with the second most important question that you can ask yourself in 2026, which is, what is the next step? Where's the next place that I put my foot down? That's it. In the extended, we'll expand on whatever comes out here. So I hope that this is okay for you. This is what I have. Let's have a look and see where Cancer is right now, please. First card out is the Four of Wands. Oh, I like that. That's lovely. We have the Queen of Swords also showing up. And let's get one more card for Cancer, please. Oh, right. So we've got clusterfuck. Right. So we have the Two of Swords in the reverse, we have the Devil in the reverse, and we have the Seven of Pentacles in reverse. Broadly speaking, this is all actually really rather good. However, it's not really however, it's probably a yes and, though. We have the Five of Wands at the bottom of the deck. So whilst the broad sweep of these cards are really quite positive, I do think that there is some underlying strife, underlying struggle, a little bit of tension in the process of working out where you stand on an awful lot of things. And that strife and struggle, the conflict that I'm talking about, it's all present here in the Five of Wands. This is a card that represents Saturn in Leo. And so there is always going to be a bit of tension, a bit of friction, a bit of feeling kind of squashed, which, as you can imagine, is not really something that Leos take too kindly, going on there. And there is a kind of chaos and an instability in the presence of this Five Wands, because we have something being established in the Four, which is then coming into a state of rupture in the Five. Now, that can, with a particular kind of mindset, feel like it's afflicting all the good energy that you put into this. But actually, realistically, what it's doing is showing you where the cracks are so that you can shore up the foundation better. And that foundation will carry the weight of what comes next. See, these cards actually work quite well together. But what's notable in its absence is the Six of Wands. If the Six of Wands was to show up here somewhere, and it still might yet, then we would have the struggle kind of going somewhere. And I don't think you'd necessarily be too prescriptive about what that outcome would be, but there would be a sense that the end was in sight. Instead, it feels like a constant grind almost, because we don't have the end to look forward to. It feels like a constant state of unpicking and trying to understand, which can be incredibly frustrating for anyone. But if you happen to be a very complex and layered sign, as you are, Cancer, then you have a few more layers than most to pick through, and so this takes a little longer than it would do for a different sign. We might say, I'm not gonna name names and out anyone, any particular sign, but you know what I mean, right? So let's just push all of that to the side for a moment, and let's concentrate on what is actually happening right now, and then we'll bring in the Five of Wands a little later. The Four of Wands is a card that, as I've said before, represents the foundation, and so there's a sense that whatever is established here will have things that are layered on top of it later, right? So it's got to be strong and it's got to support. But for me, from an energetic perspective, the Four of Wands is all about home, and it's not about your four walls. It's not about your roof. It's about the feeling of home. And this would be something so important to Cancer that I probably don't even have the vocabulary to express the significance of that as an energy to Cancer. Sometimes people can feel like home, right? And if you're struggling to get a sense of what that might look like, I sometimes suggest to people that they think about who they would call if they got the best news ever. Like, who would they seek to share that with? Those people are representative of home. Equally, if you had the worst news that you've ever had in your life, like, who would be the people that you would call for support and nurturing? There we go. I was going to say nourishing, that wasn't working. Nurturing in that situation. These are people who are the energetic sanctuary for you, somewhere that you can go and recover and heal and share something, right? Because intimacy is something I think that all Cancers want, but they're very guarded about how they get it. They're very guarded about how they allow themselves to experience it, because everything about Cancer archetypally is about protecting that home space, right? And it's one of the reasons why Cancers are so fierce in defense of that which they care about, right? So without laboring the point too much, we know that Cancer are very home oriented, and you might travel all over the world, right? But it's that sense of the home that you carry with you, the relationships, those energetic spaces that hold something for you because of the people that are in it. I'm going to leave the Queen to the side for a second, and then let's look at these. So, starting off with the idea of home and who represents home and safety and all of those things, what we have here with the Two of Swords is the unpicking that I was talking about, the attempt to look for those things that hitherto have remained invisible. That's not the word that I was looking for, but invisible would do, right? Because the Two of Swords is quite literally the things that we don't know that we don't know. Sometimes they can be the things that we do know that we don't know, but it's less often, right? There's a sense of an absolute, I can't see this here. Now, in some cases, those walls have been built up rather deliberately by the subconscious, because we don't want to have to engage with some form of reality that is sitting on the other side of that. The brain is very good, the mind rather, is very good at screening off those things that are quite uncomfortable, particularly as they pertain to the ego, but definitely in terms of any kind of trauma whatsoever, right? We can get very, very tunnel visioned about things, and we don't see the stuff that's sitting very naturally at the periphery of that. I've sometimes called this card willful blindness, but I think that's a little bit harsh, because the willful implies the cooperation of the conscious mind, and it isn't always present, right? But it's those things that we kind of pretend we can't see, or we quite genuinely can't see. When the Two of Swords shows up in the reverse, as it is right here, then what we've got is a revelation of those things that were hitherto hidden. We couldn't see them for love nor money. And I feel like there's something really very deliberate about the uncovering of these, because we've got the Queen of Swords there. She is all about processing, and she helps us understand things. She helps us understand what we think as it relates to The Four of Wands, home, family, even things like marriage, stuff like that. We can see that in the Four of Wands. And as things are revealed, so then they bounce back to the Queen for processing. Right? And what we can see here, actually across all of the cards on the table, is that, as we would expect for Cancer, a lot of this stuff is happening internally. It's not really got any external expression anywhere. There's no part of the external experience that is having a representation of this energy in it. You yourself are changing, and it's changing in light of information that was always there and always available, but for some reason could not be seen, whatever that reason is, right? And it's bouncing backwards and forwards between the Two of Swords and the Queen of Swords to try and make sense of it. Now, I like the fact that the Devil is here in reverse. It represents Capricorn energy, and so it does actually represent Saturn. There we go. I completely forgot his name there. It represents Saturn. So we have yet another Saturn card appearing on the table. Wherever we have Saturn, we have a sense of not only karma, because Saturn is the representation of karma on this plane, right? But we also have the hard work and what has been repressed and where we need to be consistent and where we need to be diligent and all that sort of thing, right? And I think what's happening here with you, another way to look at Saturn, and this is important, so sorry, I'm just going to cut myself off and come back to here, is that Saturn can quite literally be the container that is your reality. I think it's a really useful way to think about Saturn like that, actually, because if Saturn represents the limitations and the edges of things, which he does, and then we have also additionally him representing the structural container that your reality exists within. If we are in a state of unpicking what has been built, and largely we have to say it was built in the spirit of fear. Because that's what the devil psychically feeds on, is our fears or insecurities, all that kind of thing, and to some extent trauma and, you know, toxic power dynamics and stuff like that. Then what you're doing is really important work that bit by bit is revealing where the fear has been, where the gaps perhaps in your understanding have been, where the reactive egoic aspects of things might have been, where you've been chasing something that was never going to be as good as the first hit. And it's kind of tangential drugs reference, right? But it works. I understand from what I have read, I have to say, that, you know, the first time is always the best time, and then people chase that feeling and it never comes back, right? We're unpicking the fear that caused the structural container to be where it is. We're unpicking all the toxicity that caused it to be where it is. And this is by definition a long and slow process. Now, sharp-eyed amongst you would have heard me say it's the second Saturn card on the table, but there is actually a third, and it is the Seven of Pentacles right here. And I love the feedback loop that is actually happening between all of these cards in terms of what is being revealed, what is being processed, how it's helping your understanding, because let's not forget that the Queen is also doing some processing this way, of the nature of security and safety and happiness and joy and all those home things. Showing us where, quite specifically, things are out of alignment and where there's a different version of reality that we've been working to than it seems we are currently being exposed to right now. If this all sounds quite serious, you would be right to think so, because it does feel like this is some very serious work that you are doing here, very deep work that you're doing here, Cancer. And it's all in the spirit of understanding. And I think to some extent, all in the spirit of being a little bit fucking done with being afraid of certain things. Now, it could be in the past that you've not recognized it as having a fear as its kind of base motivator. You might have been, well, no, I genuinely just don't like that person, or I genuinely just don't like doing this, or I genuinely just don't enjoy that over there, right? But as the unpicking is going on and the processing is going on, and each bit of new information is feeding your understanding at a depth that we would expect from you of the whole picture. It's almost like your curiosity has overtaken your fear. And I think that's a really good place to be, personally. It's one of the few things I think that, but then I would say that because I'm a Leo, right? So I'm just a big cat and terminally curious about everything, literally. Some rocks, possibly best not disturbed and tipped over to see what's underneath them, and yet I am terminally curious and I will do it anyway. Yeah, I think there's a kind of weariness about the way that those kind of motivations playing out subconsciously for you. You don't want that. Maybe you yourself have become terminally curious and you're like, I cannot just let that rock stand. I've got to have a look and see what's underneath it. Now, this 5 of Wands, Saturn in Leo, is followed up by the 9 of Swords. And if you've been with me for a while, or you've ever taken any of my classes, particularly when I've been talking about negative cards, you'll understand that I don't really see the 9 of Swords as a difficult card. No, not a difficult card. I do as a negative card. Just because something is difficult, it doesn't mean that it's negative. And particularly if it's really helping you get to the bottom of something. The thing that I like about this Bulgarian deck, as it as offset against other decks, is the fact that it turns some understanding of what the 9 of Swords is about kind of 90 degrees somewhat. I have an arbitrary rule in most of my decks. Certainly the ones that are based on the Waite Smith generally tend to follow this, which is swords up good, swords down bad. And you see it in the court hierarchy of the swords, like the Queen of Swords is holding the sword in the upright, King of Swords is holding it in the upright. And then the Ace of Swords, you see it in the upright. 10 of Swords, they're all stabbed in the back. But then the 9 of Swords always shows the swords horizontally presented on the wall. And for me, that card has always been about perception versus reality. Now, in this deck here, and there's something canny Balkan about this. It's almost like the realization that things are exactly as bad as you thought they were. There's no question of perception shaping shaping your understanding of the situation that you're in. It's like, no, actually, there's been genuine harm experienced here. Why? Because my arbitrary rule for cards is completely subverted, very Balkan as well, been completely subverted by the fact that in this deck, the swords down are often, it's kind of arbitrary, to be fair, but I just notice these little details, and I think they're quite interesting when you start to recognise the patterns. I feel like there is a truth here that is emerging, and it is something that needs working through and processing. And is it easy? No. There's something really difficult going on here, but very, very necessary. And I like this rather supine pose that he's got here. He's kind of relaxed with the reality of those swords, which is they're not comfortable. This is not fun. I'm not enjoying doing this. But there's a point of necessity that has been reached whereby I have to do this now. The question of the 5 of Wands, though, is the interesting one. Because I think part of the realization that you're having, and you may not have got to a point where you've articulated this to yourself yet, is that this is all pointing at something. This is all going in some sort of direction, and in all likelihood the direction that it's going in is one where you're kind of looking around at what your foundation is, what your base is, what your understanding of home is. And there's a realization that something about this is going to change in the not too distant future. Why? Because it can't not. The 7 of Pentacles for me is speaking as it does about recognizing that there's something wrong. There is an irritant in the environment. More often than not, when you really dig into it, actually is about recognizing that we have changed. We are no longer aligned with this particular environment that we're in. And I like the fact that the Seven of Pentacles gives you that opportunity to pause and reflect and really lean into the energy of what is going on right now. So we've got triple Saturn showing up for you across all of these cards. We've got a lot of processing going on, but the underlying discomfort, and one that perhaps you've not been thinking about up until this point, is that things are going to have to change in future. That they can't stay the same. Why? Because you are not the same. What worked for you before isn't going to work for you moving forwards. And I like this because there is implied within this that there's a pursuit of a purpose that is more meaningful than what you have been working to up until this point. It's more you, it's more aligned, it's more sovereign, it's more authentic. It's not performative, it's not illusory. It's got the quality of once seen can't be unseen. You know, and at the root of it all, the reason why you may not have had this level of self-examination before is possibly because, and this would be very of the nature of the Two of Swords, your subconscious knows that once you've seen this and you've put together the whole picture and the whole pattern, it means everything is going to change. So we can sometimes just pretend that we can't even see what's wrong so that we don't ever have to be put in the position whereby now we have to do something about it. Do you see what I mean, Cancer? So let's give these cards another shuffle again. And let's have a look and see what part of the belief system is being wrecked. Nine of Cups, okay. It's been wrecked by this Gemini energy. Yeah. Six of Pentacles, Nine of Swords. And we have Eight of Cups. Yeah, I mean, what? You saw me shuffle that? Well, interesting. Same card, same message from a different card coming through. Right, when it comes to what part of your worldview, your thinking, your cognitive process, your belief structure is getting revised here, we can see that, and this is entirely appropriate for you, Cancer, that it is in the area of your emotions, your purpose, your what is authentic and real about you. You know, we can't talk about the archetypal significations of Cancer without bringing into it this idea of emotional investment. Right? You have to be emotionally invested in what you do. You can't show up any other way. It's just who you are. But we've seen over time, and this is what you're seeing now, is that it was never really an expression of what was yours. You emotionally invested in it because there was some sideline devil energy here that was prompting that. Thus, you've been influenced. But you're a cardinal sign anyway, so you like to point your own way. I think what it's pointing to is that you kind of inducted this, you absorbed this, you internalized it, and you made it your idea. I am emotionally invested in this, and so this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it with my whole heart. And somewhere along the line, like, you confused that that whatever you've internalized as up here, and you made it your idea, even though it wasn't. And you told yourself you were getting something from it. And maybe you did. But things are shifting around now that what worked before won't work moving forwards. We know this. The struggle is real, for sure. But this combination of the Nine of Cups and the Eight of Cups is really, really significant, because it's recognizing where what you want, need, what you would gain a great deal of satisfaction from, what would enable your nervous system to relax, is not what you have had. Now, I don't think that this is, I don't get a sense of there being a kind of, a beating that you're giving yourself at this point around what has been up until this point. Like I said, I feel like the curiosity's overtaken everything. And this desire for truth, like, is really, really strong in you. Real desire for truth, and looking for the things that are real and not seeking to avoid them even if they're difficult. Now, I have to say, for you, Cancer, that this feels oddly like a more comfortable energy for you than that does. I'm not saying it should feel like that. I'm saying that there's a kind of endurance within you that you're becoming aware of that has been underlying everything. Well, Cancer is a resilient sign anyway, right? But it's the extent to which there seems to be inbuilt into your head this idea that suffering is mandatory. Everything that is important requires a level of suffering for it. I think this is quite interesting because I'm going to talk about myself for a moment. Bear with me. I have my Venus in Cancer, and my understanding of relationships for a very long time was based on this idea of service. Why? Because I was fierce about the people that I loved, and I really did love them, and so, you know, I'm gonna pull out all of the stops to make sure that I show up as well as I possibly could. But Cancer, we've talked about the kind of training that you received when you were very, very young about, you know, the necessity for putting other people's needs before your own. If you have had the glorious experience of having a narcissistic parent, you'll know very, very well what I'm talking about. It's just like your needs are so far down the list of what is important that they never ever get a look in. Everything about you is oriented around the needs of others, and so I've found that distinctly showing up for me in the past in the way that I have conducted relationships. And then it would get to a point where I'd be like so resentful and feeling really, really bitter about it, and then massively fucking overreact about it. It was just sort of going quite literally scorched earth on the situation, rather than recognizing it was a boundary issue, but also it was me just playing out my conditioning over and over again. Now, the reason that I bring this up to you is that I am recognizing aspects of that pattern that I have experienced in your awareness of kind of the way that you've done life up until this point. I'm not suggesting that you've gone around being a slave for everybody that you know and you care about, but it's that ability to be able to identify with the energy of this, and there being something about this internally that says this will never change. Your structural container, Saturn, is saying to love is to suffer, and no matter what happens, this is always going to be present. Some days there will, you know, it'll feel a little lighter than others, but that's the underlying feeling at the bottom of everything. And this feels a little alien. Like, I don't feel a sense of you being able to connect with that so readily as you do with the Nine of Swords, this particular version of the Nine of Swords specifically. Because it isn't a question of your perception wrecking everything. Like, actually, there's real examples of some really fucking shit things that have occurred in the past. But the energies of the moment are this sort of, it can never change, it will always be the same. And then this just feels like, what am I supposed to do with this? What do I do with that energy? It's almost like you haven't been exposed to it enough to be able to see the value of it in your life. Now, where it becomes quite interesting is in this seesaw card of the Six of Pentacles here. Now, you know, it is a card that talks about balance, and you can see here we've got a massive power imbalance. I think it's amazing how the cards come out sometimes, because, like, if we look at the way that this card is set up as it relates to the two nines beside it, remember that the nines are how you personally deal with whatever suit it represents, right? What we've got is a power balance in favour of the suffering. We've got a power balance that is going to see you always having to scrape for and beg what feels nurturing and fulfilling to you personally, not an expression or an echo or a derivative of what you internalized when you were really young, but something that is uniquely yours, that you can pursue unapologetically, almost obliviously to any of the noise and the chatter that might come from other circles, whether it's people directly outside of you or whether it is that internal voice that just keeps repeating from childhood. The Six of Pentacles can operate as a statement of a situation, but it can also operate as a card of advice for rectification of a situation. And I think what's happening here with this feedback loop that's going backwards and forwards, fueled by curiosity and fueled by something that you can't quite put your finger on, and the things that it's revealing as you're doing it. It's showing you where the order of your life seems to be oriented around this idea of suffering, that there is a burden that you must bear always. And so the Six of Pentacles is saying, suffering is real, pain is real, it is actually, a natural part of living. But it's a polarity, and you don't have the balancing force on the other side. So can we straighten this up a little bit so that it more adequately reflects the container of reality, the structural container, which should have as much joy as it has pain? I think the curious quality of love is that it has that it has built in with it loss, because if you love something with your full heart and then you lose it, you're going to feel that loss with your full heart. And because this is you, Cancer, I don't feel like that's ever going to be shallow. It can't be shallow. It isn't something that you're going to share. It's not something that you're going to talk about, but it's going to be in here, so strong. This is out of balance. And it's out of balance because I think a lot of the things that you've been doing for a lot of your life, or the reasons why you've done things, to be more specific, the reasons why you've done things, they've not been an authentic expression of your energy. They've been almost like a facsimile of somebody else's energy, which you took into yourself. So quite literally, the best fucking card that we could have follow up that is the Eight of Cups. The Eight of Cups is a card of leaving things behind. It's a card of dropping the emotional baggage quite often, right? But because numerologically it responds to an 8, we're talking about ways in which we take our power back. We've arrived at a situation where our power has been lost for some reason, and in here we are shown the way to retrieve it. Now, a lot of focus is often on what is being left behind with the Eight of Cups. But there's just as much emphasis within the body of this card about what we will walk towards, if we choose to look at it that way, as there is about what we will choose to walk away from. Which is to say that the Nine of Cups proper position is here. In the Waite-Smith, it's not actually in this deck like this, but in the Waite-Smith, the cups in the Eight of Cups have been stacked in such a way as to really draw attention to the fact that there is a gap, there is one missing. Let me see if I can find it's in here. It's going to be the last fucking card in the deck, you know that, right? Just because that's how these things go. And now I'm blanking on what the Eight of Cups even looks like. That's weird how I get, card blindness sometimes. To just trust that, I will see it and... Well, I'm just fucking truffling onto myself, aren't I? Sorry, Cancer. But I want you to understand that the what I'm kind of pointing at here is always at the very fucking last card, right? So here's what I'm talking about. You see there, we've got the eight cups stacked in the foreground of the card. Got this chap on under the light of the eclipse. Here, he's put on his walking boots, his cloak. He has a walking stick. He is off. He is away. And these cups are stacked in such a way as to show you the very evident absence of the ninth cup. Oh dear fucking God, I swear. Right, well, I'm not going to pick all those up now, I'll do that in a minute, right? Now, simultaneously within that space, we have both the Ace of Cups and we have the ninth cup. So whilst we are putting down some emotional baggage and walking away from something, which is very much the essence of this card, we are doing so because we are moving towards the possibility of the ninth cup. And the ninth cup is created by connection to the ace. And what is the ace? The ace is the relationship that you have with yourself. It's the love that you have for yourself. It's the openness that you have for yourself. It's the compassion that you have for yourself. But it is something that is uniquely yours. That relationship, you will never have that relationship with anyone else. No one will ever have that relationship with you. That is yours. And that is between you and God, you and Source, you and the universe, you and the Creator, you and the cosmos. It's fucking sacred. And what's happening here, in amongst all of these cards, is that we're recognizing that this is the dominant experience, and actually there's nothing to balance that out at all, and there should be. And then we get the Eight of Cups saying, come on, Cancer, let's go find the ninth cup. But more importantly, let's put down the emotional baggage that says this should be the dominant internal experience, and that your motivation comes from the wishes and whims of other people, because that's the programming, that's the conditioning from childhood playing out. And we know that it's not real. It isn't real. Because this is your experience. If what was coming up from childhood was real, then we would actually have these two cards balancing each other out, and they're not. And all of this to say, when we look at the Five of Wands at the bottom of the deck, right, the conflict, the rupture, the instability, the chaos here is because you know, when you dig down there, maybe you don't know, but let me assure you that you will. When you dig down there, what we've got is the impetus for change. It's doing something different. It's showing up different. It's devoting yourself to something that you feel really passionate about, and that coming from you, not coming from an echo that's cycling around in your head from when you were 4, or when you were 3, or when you were 7. It doesn't really matter, right? What it's speaking to is there being kind of wound around the idea of home. But home in the sense that we talked about it to start with. Right? What is absent? Came across something interesting the other day when I was reading. And the interesting thing was that it said that the descendant in one's chart represented the place where we were not capable of internally generating for ourselves that energy. Like it needed other people to do it. My 7th house is Cancer. My descendant is in Cancer. And it's interesting. It's obviously the Venus is in Cancer as well. Like it's actually screaming for partnership. It makes all sorts of sense, but me of let's say 8 years ago, 9 years ago, was definitely on the, quite happy being on my own forever till the end of time, thank you very much. But that was the level of consciousness that was looking at the world around me. It shifted and changed in the interim period. Why? Because I put the baggage down of the idea that I just wasn't very good at relationships and people are hard work. And I went, actually, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. So let's have a look and see what is the next step for you, Cancer. There's the Six of Wands. It would show up sometime. But it's here with the Five of Swords and it's with the Hanged Man. So here we've got the King of Wands at the bottom of the deck. And if you needed some energy to start to align yourself with the idea of doing something differently, feeling something differently, I feel like he's a really good king to help you here. He's got a lot of stamina. He's got all the things that you need to walk a road that might be, you know, might be a little longer than we would like, frankly, right? But you're trying to create a balance in something that has been imbalanced forever, as far as your mind is concerned, right? But we have to allow things to play out the way that they will. I'm going to just speak to the Hanged Man here for a second, because he is the Major Arcana card. Only one of two Major Arcana cards, actually, that's on the table. As you would expect, the Hanged Man has a number of interpretations, and one can apply or all might apply simultaneously. The Hanged Man quite often represents a sort of stasis. Nothing's happening because we're quite literally hanging around, right? It's the most passive card in the tarot. And whilst there is clearly something happening here, there's an idea that where all the movement here is in the water, it's in the emotions. It also has baked within it the idea of surrendering into the place where we are, you know, voluntarily surrendering ourselves into a place of discomfort so that we can see things from a different perspective. And maybe part of this process here that you've been going through, and part of what opens this up here, is an understanding of the context around what you experienced and how you ended up running this same script over and over again. That would be entirely in keeping with the Hanged Man. But there's this interesting balance between accepting what you cannot change and changing what you cannot accept. And I don't think you got to the point of realizing what you can't accept until you had done what you are doing right now. Because the Six of Wands and this Five of Swords hanging out sideways as they are here. I like the fact that the Six of Wands is here because it is that natural companion to the Five. Right? The Five is the instability, the chaos, the Saturnian, the struggle, the strife. The Six of Wands is the promise that there will come a point where this is all worth it. It's the promise of success. It's and other people bearing witness to what you've been through. Now, because you're a Cancer, I don't imagine that you're going to be, you know, broadcasting too much of that out for public consumption. But it's this kind of idea of being able to be radiant, inside and out, radiating from an internal place. Now, we're talking about things shifting around in your aura, in your electromagnetic field. We're talking about frequency shifts. that are all coming online because you are choosing to align with something that is of you. Remember, when we're talking about Leo, we're always talking about authenticity, right? It's a really huge part of the Leo experience. And sometimes the way that we're visible is nothing to do with, whether we open our mouth and call attention to ourselves. And sometimes the ways in which we're visible is just with a kind of presence that speaks when we don't need to. And what is that presence? Well, it's energy, and whether it's an auric field or whether it's electromagnetics, whether it's frequency, vibration, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's that alignment between internal and external that just speaks for itself. Now, it's not in the upright yet because we're still in the process, for sure, but the light is at the end of the tunnel now, Cancer. That's what it feels like. And at the same time, the work of unpicking continues. Because if something's worth doing, it's worth doing properly and it's worth doing well. And you're unpicking a lifetime again. You've done this a few times, Cancer, but these layers are so deep. And things like the mother wound is just the gift. It's just like the gift that keeps on giving. I don't think that has an end point. It's limitless. Why? Well, quite simply because the relationship that we have with our mother is what informs the relationship that we have with ourselves. It sets the bar that we are taught to expect. And that's significant because that is the method through which we speak to the universe. We speak to the cosmos, which is entirely generative, not punitive. So even saying things like leaving stuff behind, it's actually just better expressed as like tossing out the baggage, tossing out the obstacles, clearing the way forward. Starting to align personally with the universe to such an extent that then what is being generated is not part of an old script that is well fucking threadbare at this point, that we've been repeating in our head over and over again. It's something different. So the unpicking continues. But it's coming to a point, Cancer, where it will be accept what you can't change and change what you can't accept. This is really interesting, right? Oh my goodness, I've been prattling on for ages. I'm really sorry. I'm going to go to the extended now. You're welcome to join me over there if you would like to do so. You can do that on Selfie, you can do that on Circle. I'd be delighted to see you in either place. Alright. Know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.